Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and yeah, a little late, but we're back on track, and it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I get the depressing feeling that this episode might wind up a bit more contentious than it should be, and the fact that Billboard likely delayed the whole damn chart because they had to deal with an AI song going viral on TikTok isn't even the full story here. For those unaware, I Run by Haven was suspected of sounding like Georgia Smith, and seemingly as soon as there was some AI chicanery involved tied to impersonating an established artist, the song was yanked from streaming, which probably contributed to why Billboard did not allow it to chart. Now, I think there's some nuances to all of this, mostly because I depressingly don't really think it was a stance made by Billboard against generative AI. It's probably a similar justification for why Heart on My Sleeve didn't chart a while back. It's more a question of the impersonation of an established major label act, but that also ignores how AI artists are trained on the music of acts established or otherwise, so it looks as though if they don't directly impersonate an act in full, they're still allowed to chart. You're seeing that on the singles charts. And I gotta wonder if Billboard's going to abide by these rules when an AI simulacrum impersonates an up-and-coming act who doesn't yet have major label connections, especially if said cheap simulacrum is bankrolled by the major labels themselves. Time will tell. I don't exactly have high hopes here. Anyway, now onto our regular ordeal, the top 10, where for another week, The Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift held that number 1. I gotta be honest, I'm legit stunned that it's held on so long, but when the radio growth is kept up, the sales are dominant, and it reclaimed the top spot on streaming, I mean, I'll give her the point, even if it's for one of her most forgettable hits that she's ever had, and at this point, it's handily beating out Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters, which saw enough radio and streaming losses to make a narrow margin much wider. I don't see it getting past number 2 anytime soon. Similar case for Ordinary by Alex Warren, now at number 3. Peaked on the radio, it's losing sales, but the streaming is so stable that any decline outside of the holiday intrusion, it's going to be a slow collapse. But what is trying to make a run in the meantime is Man I Need by Olivia Dean, up to number 4. Streaming's rock solid, the radio is surging, so even if she had an off sales week, it was still enough to gain the edge over Opalite by Taylor Swift, down at number 5, which might have great sales and entrenched streaming, but radio's just not picking up fast enough to fill in those gaps. Then we got Daisies by Justin Bieber at number 6. I've chalked this up to radio stability, but not much else. And it's also exactly the same case for Mutt by Leon Thomas at number 7. Probably not sustainable, especially heading into the holidays, and certainly precarious without that streaming backstop, and yet it was enough to push over Folded by Kehlani at number 8, which held its position, but certainly was not getting any higher, even if they were pushing that Folded homage pack that was stuffed full of remixes with R&B acts of the past 30 years. Then we got I Got Better by Morgan Wallen at number 9. It's seeing losses across the board, just not fast enough, and it takes us to a long overdue new top 10 entry, Back to Friends by Somber at number 10. Yeah, the radio loves it. They clearly see a future for this guy. Hey Warner, take the hint, get him a proper handler so he doesn't keep doing dumb shit. But with streaming now fully on board, I can see this having a long enough runway to be successful, especially if they're letting 12 to 12 have a slower runway. We'll have to see how it plays with the holidays. And that naturally takes us to our losers and dropouts, where the latter group is populated with a lot of Halloween songs that are naturally rotating out, alongside their haphazard enforcement of their own recurrency rules to get rid of Bottle Rockets by Scotty McCreery and Hootie and the Blowfish, and Bar None by Jordan Davis. Yeah, it's a lot harder to hide skirting the rules with radio formats when they only get shipped to Music Row and Country, eh? Anyway, our losers are a bit of a mixed bag, some of which I would tie to K-pop Demon Hunters finally losing a bit of steam, with Your Idol falling down to 24, and Twice's version of Takedown at 92. They also saw Strategy slip down to 87, and the expected Taylor Swift album bomb losses. Wood at 60, Actually Romantic at 61, Cancelled at 64, Honey at 71. Seems like some of the fans are finally deciding to get rid of the most embarrassing songs. can't really complain about that. And to round it off, The Dead Dance by Lady Gaga fell to 75, as it seems like both Halloween and Wednesday hype has died down a bit, and Back in the Saddle by Luke Combs is just crashing down to 59, which is exactly what happens when Nashville radio lets you have your peak and then dumps you really fast. So okay, what's replacing it? Well, in our returns and gains, let's handle a few of the scattered cases at the very bottom first. Time by Cardi B creeping back to 88, Amor by Emmanuel Cortez at 93, and Pixelated Kisses by Joji at 98. Although that last one might be tied to his new debut this week. We'll get to it. But all that's overshadowed by holiday music, which is back in mass and seemingly earlier than usual. The Christmas Song by Nat King Cole at 50. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas by Michael Bublé at 48. It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year by Andy Williams at 47. Underneath the Tree by Kelly Clarkson at 41. Santa Tell Me by Ariana Grande at 30. Jingle Bell Rock by Bobby Helms at 20. And Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree by Brenda Lee at 19. And yet it doesn't stop there. Two of our big gains are Last Christmas by Wham at 13 and All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey at 11. At this point, it just feels inevitable. And it makes any consideration of other gains this week a little paltry. And while I don't really care about WGFT by Gunna and Burna Boy getting up to 40, I do feel a bit bad for Riley Green, who has Don't Mind If I Do with Ella Langley at 34, but especially for Olivia Dean with both So Easy to Fall in Love at 29 and A Couple Minutes at 72. This would be her time to capitalize on a weak Hot 100, but since Billboard built an exception to its own goddamn recurrency rules for the holiday music, she's likely gonna wind up stranded and see tangible losses for the next couple of months, even if I would argue that her music is tastefully safe enough that it could compete in that market. But before I get angrier about Billboard's own tomfoolery, let's get to our new arrivals. Only a couple of them this week, and thankfully we're starting off on a really good note with number 82, La Perla by Rosalia and Yahritza y Esencia. Alright, so we didn't actually get the possible album bomb, at least on streaming for Lux, but hey, if the second best song from the album can land on the Hot 100 anyway, I'm certainly game for it. And honestly, I'm a little bit surprised that it worked so well as it did for me. The soft acoustics against the sweeping strings with the creaking percussion really taking its time to build the rollick, but you can clearly tell that neither Rosalia or Yahritza are taking any of this that seriously. And the blistering sarcasm at cutting down this poor excuse for a man, all haughty pretense who feigns trying to do better while behaving like a total jackass. It's truly something to behold cutting this guy down. And I think I appreciate most that the song sounds like something a guy like this would really appreciate for its grandeur and high art, only for him to get subjected to complete ridicule and destruction, which plays as meta text with how the song's performed. Sometimes when you meet someone where they are and take them down in their own space, it can be all the sweeter. So yeah, it's vicious in its grandiosity and pretty damn great for it. Highly recommended. Check it out. Number 79, Past Won't Leave My Bed by Joji. She's stuck on rewind in my mind. I try to move on, but the past won't leave my bed. I don't know what the hell Joji's doing with this album rollout. Pixelated Kisses felt more like a teaser than an actual song, and when you title an album Piss in the Wind, it seems like you're asking for the worst possible backlash. I mean, Spinal Tap taught you that. Unless this feels a little bit longer and more sober, back in synth-inflected ballad territory as the guitars sizzle behind the pianos and Joji's crooning, although the outro seems to creak and decompose with some pitch-shifted punch-ins, and the ending is really oddly abrupt to boot. This could have easily been longer than 3 minutes, and I think it would have been better for it. At least the lyrics are actually a little better, trying to get over someone or something, be it an ex or Joji's own restless depression, and that history isn't leaving his bed no matter how hard he tries. Make your bed and live in it and all that. It's certainly more of a song that can work, even if I think there's a certain grandeur of his best music, where soft focus intimacy can be a little bit less compelling, but I wouldn't mind more of this either. Decent track, check it out. Number 63, Out the Window by Kehlani.
I'm focused, it's overdue, don't throw it out the window. Out the window. The late nights, the half-truths, I was reckless, let me prove to you, I'll throw 'em out the window. Out the window.
I never would have imagined that Folded would become as big as it has, easily the best Kehlani has ever performed on the charts. And while it's not my favorite of their songs, while Change Your Life with Jhené Aiko and Tears with Omale exist, turns out getting rid of Pop and Oak would lead to more tasteful and flattering production. Who would have thunk it? And this follows in a similar lane. They did something in a night of mistakes, given their catalog and reputation, we can all surmise what that likely means. So they're now pleading for forgiveness against a backdrop of strings, supple bass, spare drums, and some pianos and chimes that feel imported straight from the 90s. In fact, this entire song feels very 90s in its presentation in R&B, except some overdubs that are a little too compressed to blend as well as they should. There would have been more reverb back then. The extended outro that's stuffed with punch-ins and vocal runs, the soft focus, not quite apology, where Kehlani's still a little too proud to admit everything on the second verse, but is still desperate for this guy to come back. It lands pretty well, and has me wondering who the hell at Interscope is telling Summer Walker that these sorts of throwbacks wouldn't work for her too. Apparently for Kehlani, it is working. And while I don't quite think this feels as punchy as Folded, it is still good. I don't expect it's gonna last through the holiday glut, but I do like this too. Unlike, and finally number 12, Travelin' Soldier by Cody Johnson and the Rockin' CJB.
Too young for him, they told her, waiting for the love of a traveling soldier. Heart of a never end, waiting for the soldier to come back again. Never more to be alone when the letter says the soldier's coming home.
I really wish this conversation could be just about the song. Originally written and cut by Bruce Robison in the mid-90s, you all probably know it most through the cover made famous by the Dixie Chicks, which became their last country hit before Natalie Maines' comments about George W. Bush and the War on Terror that saw them blacklisted by Nashville and Music Row. And as a non-fan of the Dixie Chicks, their cover's legit great, capturing a moment between a lonely young soldier going overseas during Vietnam who dies and is only really remembered by the girl he had been writing to back home. It's very human and deeply sad. And while it is political, it can't not be. It's drenched in classic Americana and a very politicized war, features a dying soldier for God's sake. The paratext of what happened to the Chicks is where the song picks up more power. Voices that speak or sing about the real cost of war getting silent. And Cody Johnson covering the song shouldn't have to mean more. It's intended for a Veterans Day commemoration, and of course it's not better because they added that stiff drumline percussion and more fiddle courtesy of the backing band, the Rockin' CJB, and nothing close to the same harmonies. But it's still Travelin' Soldier. That's a good song. If Luke Combs can cover Fast Car, well, let's put aside how Luke Combs is faithful to a fault with that song, where he still ran into some justified critique for the framing playing a little too broad, but the awkward romance with the girl too young on Travelin' Soldier kind of changes a lot when you swap genders. What could be considered tender heartbreak comes across as projection on the too young girl, and thus you wind up getting another right-leaning conservative wartime fantasy, of which there is no shortage of in country, and some that I even like. Check out Jamie Johnson's 21 Guns from last year, or if you actually want something from the wrong side of the Iraq War at the time, Letters from Home, John Michael Montgomery, great song. But when the paratext comes in, and you realize that Cody Johnson has spent much of his new mainstream country cachet being very pro-Trump and anti-No Kings protests while trying to get everyone to come together, supporting someone who will never engage in good faith politics. That's me being polite and cutting out a rant here. Not only does it feel kind of jingoistic without the bad excuse of wartime fervor, maybe it might be a reach to frame the tragic romance with the too young girl in connection with that politic in 2025, but it will serve the express purpose of trying to overwrite an older, far better cover where this is already charted better on the Billboard Hot 100 than the Chicks' version in the early 2000s. So no, I don't care for it. If you don't engage with the paratext, it's a considerably weaker cover that loses some of the lonely intimacy that made the original special, and all the subtleties gone with the fucking drum line. But if you do engage with the paratext, it's just no. Just no. And yeah, that's a week. Yeah, ultimately positive if I'm given a cover of Travelin' Soldier, the worst of the week, but Cody Johnson just really rubbed me the wrong way with this one, especially as someone who was alive for both the original and the Chicks' cover. Best of the week is easily La Perla by ROSALIA and Yahritza y Esencia. Not what I would have ever expected a couple years back given those artists, but hey, times change. Next week, I'm guessing some major Summer Walker album impact with streaming, maybe a little bit of Wicked for Good. We'll have to see. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.